friends, I am Dawn. If you are new here, I am a stay-at-home mom with two little girls. We have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and they keep me busy. But on top of that, I also run a small sourdough microbakery out of my home. I started selling sourdough, I believe, last June, so last summer, and it has been really fun. Now, if you've watched some of my previous videos, you may have heard me talk about how I had knee surgery in January and I took a break after that, obviously to recover. I did take a longer break than I had intended or planned to, but it was very much needed just for my sake for recovery and for my family's sake, because they are my number one priority, and I will probably get into that a little bit more as how it is balancing a business while you stay home with littles. But today I'm just going to share a peek into what it looks like to run a bakery and sell product out of your home with 2 littles afoot. Most of what I'll be showing you today is what we coin as dough day. So I typically have 3 days a week that are involved with selling sourdough. I have bread pickup on Thursday. So that means my week starts on Tuesday as far as prepping ingredients. And then what I'm mostly showing you today is dough day, which is on Wednesday. And then Thursday is bake day. So on Tuesday, prep day, is when I am measuring out all the flours. I also add 10% fresh milled flour to all of my loaves. So I mill that flour, measure out the rest of the flour, measure out any inclusions, prep them. And this week's are everything bagel seasoning and also a red, white, and blue loaf, which is blueberries, dried cranberries, and white chocolate chips, which is very delicious, by the way, and then just regular. So I get all that measured out and also make a leaven to make dough day much easier. And then on Wednesday, which is what I'm showing you right now, is when I mix all of the doughs together. And then I do the coil and folds, which I'll show, and shape, and then they go into the fridge for bake day on Thursday. I also want to add that I do sell sourdough brown butter chocolate chip cookies, which I make the dough on Tuesday. They ferment in the fridge until Wednesday when I bake them, and then they are also picked up on Thursday and they stay quite fresh. So that is how it works in my home. How many microbakers that I have seen on social media that I've learned from offer a porch pickup because they live in town or in a city, and that would be really awesome. However, I do not, and I live about 15 miles from the nearest towns. So what works for me is we take the bread and drive to our local towns and offer a pickup at the parks, which has honestly been really fun, especially for the girls who have gotten to just go play at the parks, and it's worked out well for us. So that is just another option if you are like me and live outside of town and a porch pickup isn't really an option. One tip is that you don't really want to be washing your sourdough down the drain. Now, I can't say I personally had any problems, but I don't really put a whole lot of it down the drain. So I use flour after I've mixed all the dough with my hand. I use flour, and that will help get all of the sourdough bits off your hand so that it's not going down your drain. But then I write the time on the tub when it was mixed, and that way I know in an hour-ish I'll come back and start the stretch and folds. So in the meantime, I will get started on breakfast, which, if you watch other videos, you know is a lot of times eggs with bread or muffins. Now that it has been about an hour, it is time to do the first set of coil folds, freshen folds, whatever you want to call them. They are slightly different, but I do that with each tub, and it helps to wet my hands with a little bit of water, and that can just help with preventing sticking, which makes it a lot easier. Now, if you have made sourdough before, then you kind of can see the similarities in the process. One thing about making bulk dough, as you can see, this loaf or this tub actually has 11 loaves of bread in it. I believe that's the right one anyways. And bulk dough ferments much faster. So it will sit on the counter almost half of the time of what 1 or 2 loaves in one bowl would. So that is why I do stick to a little bit more of a schedule and pay attention to the timeline more, because it goes much faster and it's much easier to overproof than just 1 or 2 loaves of bread. But now you can see I'm adding all the goodies to the red, white, and blue loaf right before the first set of coil and folds, which is how it works for most inclusions. For me, although the everything bagel seasoning, I actually add to it when I prep the flours, because I can do that with that one, which is anything to streamline the process is very helpful. Now, I maybe would have used to not have added the blueberries before because they're a higher hydration. However, I do lower the hydration of the bread by about 3%, and it is able to handle that well, and it saves me a lot of time rather than adding them in later into each individual loaf. And it is such an important thing to streamline things. I mean, for anyone who's doing something like this, right, to be more efficient. But when you have little kids who need you and you don't want to spend all day doing something, this is really important to streamline the process. And now I'm on to the second round of stretch and folds, which I do about 4 rounds, 30 minutes-ish apart. At least that's what I try to do. And that's what you can see I'm doing now. And then after that, it will sit for however many hours it has to until it is fermented, bulk fermentation is done, and they are ready to shape. So in the meantime, between the stretch and folds and mixing and everything that has to do with making the bread, I try to fit in the household tasks and everything that has to keep the other things going. So that means laundry, because there's always laundry to do. And thankfully, I have a helper for that. Since she can't help with making dough for other people, although I do try to include her when we're just making things for ourselves, but she's not really able to help when I am selling it. But she gets included where she can be. Something that I have been trying to streamline more of all of this is my cookie process. Now, I used to always just mix up the dough, put it in the fridge, in the bowl, and then the next day shape. But that takes significantly longer than scooping and pre-measuring the cookie rounds while the dough is soft. So that's what I've been working on, and it has been very helpful. Something that has been probably more of a challenge than it should be is trying to get the cookies done before it is, nighttime, before my husband gets home, before it gets really late. And so sometimes that I'm able to bake the cookies before I shape the dough. Sometimes it is after, but right now it is in between while I'm shaping and baking cookies at the same time, because it's hard. It is hard on a family when it's hard on me, on the kids, on everyone involved when I am trying to, bake and finish things up at 8, 9 p.m. And it doesn't really work, and it's not sustainable for my family personally. So trying to get everything done, let's say in a normal work week time, like by 5 p.m. or whatever you want to say. So that has been included into baking the cookies earlier and getting them done ahead of time. Something I want to add about why it could take longer is that, when I have 11 loaves of dough in a tub, it goes much faster. Bulk fermentation goes much faster than if I only have 5 loaves of one kind. It can take hours longer before I can get to shaping them. So that means every week it can really change depending on what orders look like. And that can just make it a little bit more challenging to plan out how it will go. Something that has helped with flexibility is in the summer months when it is warmer in the house, I only put 50 grams of starter per loaf because fermentation speeds up much faster with warmer temps. So that gives me a little bit more time when it comes to shaping, where I can get through them all and stop if I need to for a kid, because I do not want them to overproof, right? So that gives me a little more flexibility. And then in the winter, it speeds things up. I put 100 grams of starter per loaf, and that helps things go faster. Otherwise, it could take literally all day for the dough to ferment, and I might not be shaping until 9 p.m. and that is not what I want to do. So that is just a tip if you are interested in selling sourdough. And I do want to add, if you have any questions about sourdough or the process of selling it, any part of the fermentation, anything about selling it or doing it in bulk, any questions you may have at all, please feel free to ask them in the comments. I will do the best to answer them as I can and would love to help you out if that is what you need. So one more thing I want to talk about is balancing something like this, running a microbakery, with kids afoot. Especially with little kids where they don't always exactly go play independently, and they need you a lot more than maybe older kids do. And ultimately, when I first started this, I had to have it in my head that my kids and my family are my number one priority. That is the most important job that I have right now. It is, raising them and being able to keep the house going and do things that my husband needs done. All of those things, those are my main priority. So this has to just fit in. There have certainly been times where things fall behind and it doesn't always work like that. And honestly, at some point, if that continues like that and it's always feeling like that, I might have to reassess because it may no longer fit into this season of life. An example of this would be when I went into having my surgery, I thought that afterwards I would revamp things and try to offer another location in a bigger local town. But that became clear pretty quickly that that was not going to be the best route for my family or for me. So in fact, what I did was I went to every other week rather than selling every week, to give me just more time to do the things that I needed to do. And what I did before was offer a pickup location in one local town one week, and the next week I would do it in the other town, and I would go back and forth between the two. And I know this is more specific to my example, but now I am going to sell every other week and offer a pickup location in both towns, both at the times I sell. And it's just going to give me more freedom, especially as it's warming up and we have gardens and we have more chickens and just literally everything that comes with being busier in the summer. It is going to let me not have as much stress, which in turn makes me a better mom. And I'm just gonna be able to handle it all and enjoy it while I can. Because again, my main thing right now is to get to enjoy these little girls growing up. And it is not to stress myself out and busy myself so much that I don't get to. So my encouragement to you is, if it seems that everyone is expanding and growing and making more money, but you feel stressed and don't feel like that's right for your family, it is okay to reel back. Now, some practical tips to actually make it easier and fit in with your life would be, of course, doing what you can while they're sleeping. A big thing is mixing the dough before they wake up. Unfortunately, that does not always happen for me because it seems to be when I wake up, they wake up. But it works much easier if I can wake up extra early and mix things and get things going earlier in the day so that I can be done earlier in the day. And of course, prepping ingredients the day before makes that much easier. And same with baking, trying to get it done while they're sleeping, or started a good portion of it done while they're sleeping. So that way we can be done earlier, get outside, because sometimes that can be a struggle, is to be getting outside while trying to do things inside. So those are some practical things. But again, if you have any questions about any of this, please feel free to ask away in the comments. Well, thanks so much for watching, friends. I hope you enjoyed seeing a peek into, a day as a stay-at-home mom and microbakery. If you are interested in doing this yourself, or if you just are watching for fun, thanks again for being here. And until next time, bye, friends.